Okay, back with the second talk now. Now, this is an issue food safety has come up in some of the earlier ones, and so today we've got Renko Schuil from TTA plus ISO, who's going to talk about ensuring food safety in CEA. Big issue because we've seen problems, less in Europe, about CEA in food products. So, Renko, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Derek. Nice to be back, so to say, because I think it's my third consecutive year presenting on this event. So I'm happy to be back. Yes, welcome. Well, Renko Schuil. I'm talking about food safety in CEA. A little bit of why food safety is important, a little bit of an open door, but still some background information, and then the most important parts: risk mitigation, how you keep it efficient and feasible, and I'll conclude with some key takeaways. But let me start by introducing very briefly first myself. This is me. I was born and raised in the Westland area. You see a nice aerial picture of it in the middle of all the greenhouses. When my professional career started, I've always been involved in CEA, in climate solutions, in growing systems, in internal transportation systems. And now for the last 3 years, I'm involved with TTA-ISO in the meantime, in automation and robotics, basically. TTA-ISO is a automation and robotics producer and company who implements automation and robotics. There were two separate companies, TTA and ISO, and last January, I think you've read it if you follow us a little bit, we merged into one big company, meaning more innovative power to the market, bigger portfolio to choose from. So in our opinion, a win-win situation for everyone involved, basically. At TTA-ISO, we deliver we dedicated sectors, so the bulbs and cut flowers, we have ornamentals, carbon and fiber, meaning forestry and all crops that are grown for the fibers, and food and CEA. And for that last sector, I'm responsible for commercially wise. So within that food and CEA sector, we have a lot of capabilities. We do turnkey processing rooms consisting of seeding lines, sticking, sorting and grading, spacing and transplanting. We do automated grafting for young plant breeders, and of course harvesting. So in a nutshell, this is myself and TTA-ISO. Food safety. Well, of course, an important issue. This topic was brought up at earlier presentations today as well. We all know headlines like this about big callback actions, about contaminated lettuces, about the outbreaks within all kinds of throughout the chain. Sorry, all kinds of food systems, and that's a serious thing because in the end, people die from illnesses because of food safety issues. But further, it has a lot of other. It touches a lot of other topics as well. First of all, of course, consumer health is number one because that's what we're all concerned on. But also your trust and reputation as a company relies on a good food safety system in place. Of course, we have to comply to regulations. That's for sure, and the economic impact of a breach in food safety is enormous. Not only the callback action of certain goods, but also the rebuilding of the trust and the reputation that we discussed earlier. So it is very important to secure your food safety within your operation. A little bit where are we talking about, because food safety, it's not only bacteria, it's also chemical and physical. So let's dive into this a little bit deeper. You have your biological contaminations. So bacteria, we know this list. The list goes on, by the way. Same counts for viruses that are in the biological sector, fungi and molds, of course, and protozoa, which happen less, but still is something to keep in mind and consider your food safety strategy on. Then there's some chemical parts, so pesticides residues, cleaning agent residues. I think nutrition residues count in some parts of the food safety strategy as well, and some heavy metals. And then last but not least, physical elements like plastic fragments, metal shavings, or glass wood, or any foreign object that doesn't belong within your crop or your produce. The way these contaminants are distributed varies as well, meaning that we have the airborne contaminants. Um, they are transported through the air through the facility. Your waterborne contaminants, so meaning everything that comes through your water system or through your water system, irrigation system, but also maybe the water and the cooling aid in chillers, etc. These are a cause for contaminants as well. Surface-borne contaminants laying on surfaces that are not cleaned well and are happy to jump on the food whenever it's being touched by the food. Of course, your staff bring a certain risk with them as well every day they come into work. Also discussed earlier today, I think by Grow Up, is what do you bring inside your farm from outside, and what possible risks are there on your input-borne contaminants. With our pest-borne contaminants, CEA and vertical farming especially is considered a closed system, but nothing is closed because your staff enters the building, etc. So you cannot think that pests won't happen to you. You have to take measures to keep the pest and the pest-borne contaminants with them outside of your facility. Food safety is important in every facility that is handling food or processing food or growing food, of course. But the special attention is for the ready-to-eat produce. We see different suppliers growing and claiming on the packaging ready to eat, no need to wash, which is very good. It gives a certain customer trust, I think. But you need to be more and more aware of how that is perceived in the market, and what you do while producing, and especially after harvesting it, how you keep your food safety in place. In the United States, the ready-to-eat or the raw agricultural commodities have a special chapter in the regulations. In Europe, it's not a formal term, so they have some category with intended use in place, so raw consumption versus cooking required. But ready-to-eat is used in broader sense and not in a legal definition. When we look at regulations, let's be clear, the list goes on. There are a lot of regulations. I cannot jump into too deep in all the regulations, but just to see what governments and agencies, how they perceive food safety. In the United States, you have the Food Safety Modernization Act installed under President Obama, and that is they have a chapter, the Produce Safety Rule, and that applies to farms growing produce for human consumption. In Europe, there are some general food laws with some additional hygiene packages that can be, how do you say that? Sorry for this. That can apply to farms, indoor farms, CEA farms as well. And that's I think the same in the United States, state-wise and country-wise. In Europe, you have different regulations. So always be aware of what regulations you have to comply to in the region you live, because I haven't mentioned Middle East, Asia, Africa now, so I had to be a little bit put some boundaries there. Then, of course, there are some standards and protocols you can follow, and by following them, you basically comply to all regulations in place. So there's the global gap, the Primus GFS or the SQF, for example, mostly used in the United States. And good to mention that CEA Food Safety Coalition is now CEA Alliance as a leafy greens module. That's a very specific indoor farming set of standards and protocols, which you can place as an add-on on the standards like Global Gap and the other ones, just to ensure that you have your protocols and your standards up to date. Europe and the rest of the world, we see the same or some other standards that you can follow and comply to outside of the HACCP, of course. That's a standard that's advised in any way. Now, a little bit more important is how to mitigate those risks, because we know what risks we have. We know what to what limits we have to bring the risks down. But how to do that's always important. So I think a good one is zoning. Zoning meaning you have a high care, medium care, and a low care region. With every care zone has its own cleaning protocols, air treatment, different temperatures, etc. So what you're actually doing is where it matters most, you put the most efforts in keeping your food safety standards as high as possible. If you really need 3 zones or just stick to 2 zones, that's up to you. You have to keep it practical as well. But when you have zoning in place, what you can do with airflow, so by overpressuring the highest care compartments, there's always an airflow away from the higher risk area to the lower risk area, meaning that no contamination, airborne contamination from low care can enter the high care zone. So airflow is a good measure to take, additional to zoning, to take care, especially of the airborne contaminants. Well, of course, your cleaning protocol should be always in place. You must know when to clean, what surfaces, what area, on what, how often per day, per week, per month, etc. Personal hygiene and training is important. That speaks for itself, you would say, but the more attention you give it, the more your staff is familiarized with all the protocols and all the standards you have in your company, making sure that they will address each other when they see someone is taking it not so careful. It needs to be a mentality instead of just a set of check boxes. Already discussed earlier today by Grow Up, everything you get into your farm, you need to maybe treat, but at least monitor and control the quality of the substrates, the nutrients, the seeds, etc., and clean it when necessary, because this can be a potential source of contamination. Of course, a continuous check for your water quality. You can treat the water, of course, but also testing is as important. Already mentioned pest control. You would think it's a closed environment, so why bother some pests or bugs? But they will get in if they get a chance to, and as long as your staff can get into your farm, pests can also potentially get into your farm. So seal the entry points for chemical contamination wise. It's good to have physical barriers and traps rather than chemical pesticides, but in such a way that the physical remains of a pest can never come into your crop, obviously. And of course, good IPM strategies, integrated pest management strategies, should be in place as well. Default checkups, environmental control, tests for air quality, water control, quality services. Always check and log, monitor air, water systems, everything. A little bit overlap with what I previously said, but it's very important to keep checking how well you're doing on this matter. This will result, so good record keeping will result in traceability. This gives you a good assurance. You have always something to show to whatever audit team you have over the floor, but also in case of contamination, you have a very rapid trace back to whatever the source might be and take actions preventing it in the future. And of course, your HACCP, your analysis and risk, know what your risks are, react to that, implement preventive controls. So it's a continuous circle of checking, acting, and checking again. So you would say with everything in place, you would reach 100% food safety, but well, is that really something you can live up to? That's the question. In our opinion, food safety should be considered more an aspirational goal than an absolute guarantee. Because an absolute guarantee would require zero tolerance for contamination, a perfect compliance, and a complete traceability, which is very hard. And why is it very hard? You're working in biological systems. They are very complex. You can always have human errors. Of course, you rely on the environment, not only of your outside, but also what you bring into your farm. And a very important one is how do the costs weigh up to the benefits? Because getting 100% food safety at any costs requires so much capital investment that you can doubt if it will be feasible and as efficient as you would hope for. So in our view, a more realistic approach would be you have to, of course, minimize risks to an acceptable level. And that acceptable level, of course, is very low when it comes to the bacteria. But in other ways, you can say, okay, well, my acceptable level is at this point. You know your hazards and you prevent them by using protocols, good manufacturing practices, by your zoning, by basically all the measures we discussed earlier. In that way, you help minimizing the risks and you improve continuous. So you monitor, you audit, you have take corrective actions, and you monitor again, etc., etc., etc. Because this is not something you can margin about. So if we're building a food safety pyramid where we say, okay, though 100% food safety is an aspirational goal, you have your continuous improvement and innovation, you have your zoning and airflow control, your sanitation and cleaning protocols, plus your personal hygiene and training, and you have your basic facility design and your good agricultural practices, meaning that if you start at the bottom and you work your way up, while you grow, while you get more professional, while your customers demand more from you. Of course, your costs, complexity, and precision grows with this pyramid. That's a given fact. But still, in this way, you are more towards that goal, and every day you get a little bit closer to the goal. So it's not a fixed destination; it's a mindset, in our opinion, and it requires continuous improvement and responsibility. So I'm ready for some key takeaways of today. I would say a controlled environment is not a risk-free environment. That's very important to know. I trust you as indoor farmers, vertical farmers. You know that it isn't risk-free, but it's also important to let your staff know it's not risk-free. That they keep being told that they have to take care on hygiene and food safety. It's a system and not a step. That's something that I want to emphasize on. So it's not a checkbox and then you never have to look at it again. No, it's every day, day in, day out, you keep checking and balancing. I would say you strive for excellence and not for perfection. Because you cannot eliminate the risks at any costs, because those costs would be way too high for your operation. Of course, it's always nice because you hear me from TTA-ISO saying a lot about food safety. What is our role then? Let me be clear, we are no food safety consultants. So if you want specialized professional aid, look for a consultant or hire one and look into the details with them. But of course, we have a lot of experience. We know I visited many vertical farms, CEA facilities for leafy greens, etc., and we know how to address and incorporate food safety in farm designs, especially the processing room, of course. But we can add value in your whole design. So by getting us at the table at a very early stage, you prevent a lot of potential risks and in the future. So contact us for assistance in layout design or to make use of our extensive network, because we're always open to bring people in contact with other people. That's our goal anyway. So I would like to thank you for your attention. This was it, and I think we have some time for question and Q&A.
Cool. Thanks, Renko. Interesting. Today is becoming systems of systems. So the food safety piece is a system within the bigger growing system. And I would suggest that if we get the food safety bit wrong, it doesn't matter how well you produce it. Bad news on food safety could kill the business.
Yep.
I think, which is clear. And we've seen that actually in the US. And the US clearly has its own problems with the collapse of the EPA and changes in the FDA and so on. However, that's there, this is here. So maybe a kind of left field question for you, Renko. So there's one here saying, how much is known about the specific aspects that influence consumer attitudes towards CEA? So the ready-to-eat market. Do you any feel for this?
Yes, the trend is that so consumers, they value leafies or herbs grown in a closed environment, can be CEA, so greenhouse, can be vertical without daylight. They value it cleaner and healthier than, for example, the open field produce. Of course, that brings a responsibility as well, because as we say in Holland, trust, it comes by foot and it leaves by horse, or I don't know how to rightly translate, but it's very hard to rebuild consumer trust once you let them down once.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you think today's food standards relate to the modern growing facilities? Have we over-engineered food safety?
But that is very different from case to case, to be honest. I visit a lot of facilities, and some are at such a high standard that it's almost impossible to have your staff in entering the growing facility to check up on some things because of all the high standards. And I sometimes come to some facilities where I say, okay, there might be room for improvement here. Overall, there is a good attention, but what I see is the growing room is always top of the bill, because they have all these sensors and measurements of irrigation water, of air quality, etc. And when you step into the processing room where you transplant, so basically where there's a high risk of contamination, etc., people sometimes neglect it. So overall personal hygiene, so wearing the gloves and the coats and the hairnets, etc., that's all basically in every facility that's very well organized. Grow room as well, processing room might be considered more and more in the basic design, in my opinion.
Okay, cool. Okay, I think in the interest of time, we'll draw close to it there. Lots of really interesting, what would seem to be basic knowledge, but people do forget and they kind of need help on that. So I would urge you to go and contact Renko. Contact details are there and the networking site is behind this. So go and see him. Renko, as ever, very informative and useful. And I'm sure we'll see you again.
I'm sure as well. Thank you very much for having me.
Bye.
Okay, goodbye.